ZA2019-01. The other day in the March meeting, we did the discussion, and so we're picking up with deliberations. I might remind the board that we need a motion before we can discuss an item on the very first regulation. I'm assuming everybody's from the March meeting with the regs. We'll start with that E.1.A. I guess, wait a minute, I'm wrong. We're ready to open it up to the public.
Yes.
Right, John, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself.
You're right.
We're going to start with the public portion of the hearing. Everyone's going to get 5 minutes to speak. And, if you have something to say, come to the podium, state your name and address.
My name is Glenda Blue. I live at 1425 Shawnee Road in Butler Township. I would like to, so many people here, I wanted to talk early. I want to address the setbacks, and while I would really like it if everyone voted to approve Jason Wright's proposal on the setbacks, the 1.5 mile setbacks, what I want to point out is if you're not going to do that, I do hope you at least compromise, and I would like to present what I feel is a reasonable compromise, and that is the original setbacks were for 250-foot turbines at 2,000 feet setbacks. And if you do the math, that is a 1:8 ratio. For every 1 vertical foot rise in the turbine, there is an 8 lineal foot setback. And I would like at least, if you cannot bring yourself to vote for Jason's proposal, to at least maintain the same ratio, because this morning, well, this afternoon actually, I was at the county commission meeting, and repeatedly, the people asked the EDF representatives, how tall will these turbines be? And they never gave a solid answer. They said, well, over 500 feet, under 500 feet. So that kind of makes it so it's hard to decide what the setback should be, because we don't know the height, and they will not tell. They said it's not really in the books right yet. They have to do a lot of research. So anyway, what I would like to say is we maintain that same 1:8 ratio. So if the turbine goes to 300 feet, that's a 2,400 foot setback. If a turbine goes up to 500 feet, that's a 4,000 foot setback. And if we do that, we're maintaining what the original zoning board did, the same distance based on the height of the turbine. And I would also like to see the zoning setbacks. I would like to see you vote to have them from the property lines as opposed to the residences. Because so many people have their homes on the edge of their property, and if they set a turbine on the other side, this entire property is called trespass zoning. It will be unusable when it gets so near that turbine. So I think the only fair way is to do the setbacks from the property line, and then to hopefully maintain that 1:8 ratio. And that's all I have this evening. Thank you, gentlemen, and Kathy.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, and thank you for allowing me to talk to you today. My name is Ruth Houghton. My husband and I farm 4 miles west and 1.5 south of Roxbury in Bonneville Township. We live and we farm. We live on the farm, on the land we farm. My husband is the third generation farmer on this land. Our son is the fourth generation. We oppose the wind farms for these reasons. Number one, we want to keep our land undamaged as it is passed down to the other children, to our children and our grandchildren. Number two, these wind farms are not cost effective. If they were, they would not need to have taxpayer money. Number three, we simply do not, I'm speaking now for my husband and myself, we simply do not trust the wind farm people to do what they say that they will do in the leases. And finally, the last time I checked, they're not making any more beautiful land like what's in the northeast corner of McPherson County. Thank you.
Thank you. I forgot to mention, this case tonight is on wind farm regs, not whether we're voting for a wind farm or not. So it's just wind farm regs that we're doing tonight. So.
David Peterson, 1955 Rivera Road. I'd like to read this to you. We, the undersigned, are residents and/or landowners in the area of McPherson County being considered for the construction of commercial wind farms. We feel that these wind farms would be a substantial benefit not only to us, but to all of the residents of McPherson County. We respectfully request that the Planning and Zoning Board reject the proposed change in minimum setback requirements for wind towers. This proposal would increase setback requirements to the point that construction of wind farms would be potentially eliminated. This would not be in the best interest of McPherson County. Thank you. There's 95 signatures on this.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Andrea Potter, and my husband Brad and I reside at 2444 Overland Road, Canton. I've grown up in Canton all my life, and my grandparents farmed in rural Galva since the early 1900s. My home sits on the south side of the section from your board member Raymond Williams, who has a number of proposed wind farm turbines signed up for his property to our north. Raymond sold us our property of 10 acres in June of 2007 as our realtor, as our friend, and as our neighbor. Our property was established before zoning was changed to current standards of having to sell land in no more smaller plots than 40 acres to build a home. A setback I assume the Planning and Zoning Committee thought was important to change for the very reason of not letting a bunch of small hobby farmer acre plots take over McPherson County and break up larger farming operations. We were very close friends and helped each other out at every turn. We are now neighbors who no longer speak or acknowledge each other. I know that some people in my area that have signed contracts think it is wrong that we bring complaints against these turbines and shouldn't have the right to stop landowners from getting them and reaping a financial benefit. This is a government subsidized program, and they are actually paying themselves with our tax money. Ask a corn farmer how well it works out for them in the ethanol business. They are still relying on fossil fuels to stay viable and always will. Again, I don't think any landowner here is going to give up their oil check because they are getting a turbine check and want to go green. McPherson County realtors should also acknowledge the fact that all the property values in Battlefield Township will decrease. My only hope will be that I can get my property sold before that happens. No one is going to want to buy a home for the price that I will expect with several 600-foot wind turbines sitting a half mile from my back deck, when they can go somewhere else for the same money that doesn't have the noise and the eyesore. It's just human nature to pick the property with the least amount of eyesores for the money. Our property sits on a McPherson County maintained road that back in 2007 was well maintained. It sees a lot of traffic from 27th to 21st Avenue for those coming to the State Lake traveling north on 24th Avenue. Fast forward 12 years, and it has slowly gotten worse and worse. As of today, it has only been graded 2 times this year. And about a year ago, a board member of Battlefield Township took over maintenance from the county on many miles of road, including Maxwell Game Preserve, the State Lake, and 24th past his residence. Therefore, I, as a resident of Battlefield Township, need to make sure that the revenue stays strong in our area and we aren't giving away tax abatements that could be funding our roads. Otherwise, it will just mean a mill levy increase in my township. This is not an issue of a farmer with a piece of ground to plant, where this year he uses planting seeds from Company A, but it doesn't grow well and isn't profitable in the end. The harvest is a bust. Next year, the same farmer decides to use Company B seeds and it's a bumper crop. The decision of putting these wind turbines with very lax and outdated regulations and a year from now decide it doesn't work out, there is not a next year. For planting and regrouping, this seed is forever. And how many acres less planted will the bumper crop be due to the carbon footprints left behind by the turbines? This will affect our lives for the rest of our lives. I think this is an awesome undertaking, and it should be decided on the side of caution, not money. You chose to rezone from 10-acre plots of land to 40-acre plots of land. Shouldn't a 600-foot tower versus a 250-foot tower get the same consideration for setbacks? In closing, I would not be allowed, nor would I want to do anything on my property that would stand 600 foot in the air and be obtrusive to my neighbor's property 24/7. I believe there are many scientific facts that back up the idea that it is wrong in this heavily populated area of human and wildlife of Battlefield Township has to not have proper setbacks for our residents and the game preserve. I've talked to residents that thought that it was going to be a financial gain for them in Marion County, only to find out that they now cannot sleep and do not know what to do with their property. In addition to Marion County roads that can't keep up with property maintaining their roads. Please help me protect my investment. It may not be as expensive as yours, but it means as much to me as it does to you. And I want to live out my retirement preferably on my deck, looking out at the wildlife and my family in God's country, not hiding down in the basement away from the flicker and the noise.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm a farmer, I live in Northwest
State your name and address.
Robert Larson. Well, I got a couple of simple questions to ask. I don't know if you guys remember, there used to be out west, they was going to put 2 coal plants up. And the biggest reason why they didn't get put up is because this energy is going out of state. If you listen to what supposedly Kansas is producing, is 37% of their energy. So they're selling 27% of it back east. There's also a line that's going to go from Texas through Oklahoma, through Texas, through Kansas, through Oklahoma. It's going to be 1,500 miles that's sending the energy back. Now, I'm selfish. If them people supposed to have 10%, why should we be furnishing their 10%? Another thing, I have dealt with this so-called company. They grow through my milo field, my son's milo field. We haven't heard anything. That's been almost 6-7 months ago when we harvested. So I don't think their word is very damn good.
Just keep in mind it's zoning regs.
Well, you're talking about keeping them away. I'm talking about, they don't give a shit. So, that's basically what they told me. I told them how to get on it without destroying the problem. Well, I should have been talking to my dog, he'd have listened a lot better. So, that's just a little bit. The distance, I don't know how far them damn things fly out, if they ever come home. I've been trying to listen to this thing for over a year and a half, and I have no idea what they are proposing, what the county is getting,
Well,
and they got distance. You're going distance. I want them, if that thing falls X amount of feet away from the damn thing, I don't want them falling on me. Now, you just said that they don't know.
I didn't say that.
Well, that's what was said. They don't know. I'm just telling you what the word is.
Thank you. Anybody else? I might suggest, just to save time, if you want to try to gather one or two at a time to the side and save that back up in between.
I'm Larry Kaворth. I live at 1755 Rainbow Road.
In your answer.
On November 20th, 2017, Nick Coyle of the Diamond Vista project requested this board to change the height of the towers from a limit of 250 feet to 500 to 600 feet. Mr. Frazee moved to limit the height to 600 feet. This was seconded by Mr. Toll. All the board voted yes. The motion carried. So there was a change made to the commercial wind energy project numbers with no corresponding change to the setbacks. You know what this meeting is about. I sent all the members of the board some of my suggestions to modifications, so I won't go into those numbers in detail. What I will add is not, along with these setbacks, a lot of them have to do with ice throw, shadow flicker. But one of the things that hasn't really been discussed is turbine disintegration. In about November of 2018, in Ottawa district in Canada, a turbine, which was under 500 feet, disintegrated. Debris was found from 500 feet right underneath the tip of the blades out to 1,900 feet. The debris out at 1,900 feet was 3 foot by 1 foot. So when we're considering setbacks, some of our setbacks would not protect, even projected setbacks would not protect against a disintegrated blade. And this is at a normal speed. There's no factor for a runaway blade. So if you do a runaway blade, all bets are off how far debris could go. So, like I said, without going into the setback numbers they've already been mentioned, they need to go with the 600 foot. You gentlemen and ladies approved a 600 foot thing, so let's make the setbacks correspond to a 600 foot tower. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
I'm Darrell Alexander. I live at 1976 20th Avenue, McPherson. I live in the proposed area. I'm for the wind farm. We hear all kinds of opinions, and I have an opinion on them. Everybody in this room has an opinion on them. But what I think it's up to this board is not to look at the opinions and look at the facts on your own. You have to look at the facts, not opinions. There's lots of opinions. We can take, I could list you off all kinds of facts on one side. They can list you off what they call facts on the other side. You guys are the ones that's got to look at the facts, weigh the facts, and make a judgment call from the facts, not opinions. And please look at the facts.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Beverly Kavorus, and I live at 1755 Rainbow Road, Lindsburg, Kansas. We are deeply concerned about safe setbacks from proposed CWEPs in Carson County. The regulation changes that have been proposed need to be put in place to protect every citizen. We are agreeable to meeting you guys somewhere in the middle, or other people. 4 different projects are currently being proposed by big American and foreign companies who do not live here, work here, or pay taxes here. And frankly, I don't think they're going to care one whit about any of us once the project is up. They're not going to care how the projects affect our people, our wildlife, our roads, our agricultural land, pristine prairie ground, and the long-term financial health of our county. If safe setbacks kill their projects, so be it. That is not our problem. That is their problem. Our problem and highest priority should be protecting the citizens who do pay the taxes, who do live and work here. I really believe that a good compromise can be made that will satisfy those who are for the projects and those who are against turbines being placed too near their homes and property lines. These regulations are our only protection. I would encourage you to delay any vote on case ZA2019-01 until you find the time to properly consider every proposed change. There is no hurry. There's no need to rush to a decision. And if you don't agree with the setbacks proposed, then meet somewhere in the middle. Better yet, form a focus group of informed citizens to meet with you and discuss all the options. Your job is to serve McPherson County, not aggressive companies that come in from the outside. For the small minority of those who have signed leases, they should already understand that safe setbacks are a proper way of dealing with this issue. They should also want proper setbacks for their safety and that of their families, their properties, and the environment that they will have to live in for the rest of their lives. I am providing you a map of all the leases that have been filed at our County Register of Deeds office as of November 29th of last year. This land covers 4 different companies' leases. Many more have probably been filed since then. If you would like copies of all the leases reflected on this map, I can provide those to you in a PDF file. This is evidence that this board and the Board of County Commissioners cannot argue with or deny. It would behoove you to study these documents before you make any decisions. I have vowed since the beginning of all this turmoil began to work with you. I've vowed to work with commissioners and all citizens on either side. I'm available and at your service if you need any help in assessing our current situation. You are all good people who pledge to serve honestly and fairly, and we do appreciate you. We just hope and pray that you will work with us and take everything into consideration.
Thank you.
And I brought you a plastic bag in case it's still raining. There's a legend inside. You can look at it. It shows the enormity of what you guys are facing.
Good job.
Hello, my name is Sarah Davidson. I live at 1919 Quivira Road here in McPherson. Just a little background on myself. I am the 2nd generation living on our farm and 4th generation farm family. My children will be the 5th generation. And windmills have been a part of farm life since the 1800s. But the agricultural windmills that farms utilize are very different than the industrial commercial wind turbines that are being used today. We all want electricity in our modern world, but no matter what side of the fence you're on about this issue, safety is important. Safety for landowners, tenants, hunters, and all others is important. Such a large commercial product in a residential and agricultural setting is a large liability for the companies putting them up and the landowners. This is why safe setbacks are so important for everyone. An example is the Statue of Liberty. From the bottom to the top of the torch is 305 feet tall, or the equivalent to a 22-story building. If they are proposing between 500 to 600 feet towers, like wind turbines, and that's not including the blade height, Think of 2 statues of Liberty tall, or a 44-story building dotted all around our county and in between all those homes. Everyone needs to be safe on their property, whether they are a participating or a non-participating person. There are hundreds of websites with recommendations on safe setbacks, and I implore the Planning and Zoning Board to do their due diligence and research on the matter before making decisions that will affect our county for decades to come. Because this will affect my children, depending on it keeps going, possibly grandchildren as well. Please protect everyone by researching and adopting safe setbacks. Thank you.
My name is Joel Woods. I live at 452 East Lincoln Street, Lincoln. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about the commercial wind turbines in the state and the county of McPherson. My parents and grandparents have taught me that if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And everything I've learned about these wind turbines has helped me to realize that they're not all they claim to be. They can be dangerous, they can cause serious noise, pollution, and they can be a major fire hazard and more. These proposed setbacks will be beneficial for people, agriculture, wildlife, and tourism. Thank you.
I'm Margie Stewart. I'm representing Audubon of Kansas, and I live on McDowell Creek in Erie County. I'm the board chair of Audubon of Kansas, which is a statewide organization. And this is a statement prepared by our board. The wildlife of Kansas is owned by the people of Kansas and held in trust for the people of Kansas. The guardian of that trust is our state agency, Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism. That agency has developed guidelines for the siting of commercial wind energy conversion systems, such as you're considering the regulations for. After our experience statewide with wind energy, we urge you to incorporate the Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism guidelines into the siting standards for your county. If you do not incorporate them into your regulations as standards, you will find that one county in Kansas after another has found that the wind developers will ignore our Kansas guidelines. In a copy of the statement that I will leave with you, I include those guidelines. I'll just mention now a couple of them that apply in particular to McPherson County, which is a beautiful county with much native prairie, and the guidelines protect native prairie with abundant wildlife, and the guidelines protect migration corridors, wildlife gathering places, and you have the marvelous Maxwell Wildlife Refuge. The guidelines protect state wildlife areas. I know from our recent experience in Reno County that the developer there is going right up against a state wildlife area in Cheney Lake in its proposal. Reno County would have been well served to have these guidelines as standards, and then they could have protected their state wildlife area. I urge you to protect Maxwell Wildlife Refuge by incorporating these standards into your regulations. Once you've given approval, there's very little recourse, no matter how many violations have occurred. It's a sad thing, but we've had quite a number of years now with a commercial wind energy development around the state. And the developers will ignore protections for wildlife or natural areas if the county's do not insist upon them. In county after county, wind developers have gone ahead and have torn up native prairie, placed turbines in migration corridors, in wetlands, and situated them right next to state wildlife areas. This is a key point not only to protect our natural resources, but also because the only reason that we taxpayers, federal or state, give such abundant subsidies to the wind developers is that wind energy is supposed to be, quote, green. But how green can it be if it ignores protections for wildlife? If it damages native prairie, if it mangles migrating birds, if it pushes species closer to extinction? How green can it be if it mars the experience of visitors to Maxwell Wildlife Refuge so that they no longer want to come? The guidelines protect our natural heritage, which is the birthright of all Kansans. No one wants that birthright to be sold for a mess of subsidized pottage. Therefore, Audubon of Kansas urges you to include the guidelines of Kansas Wildlife Parks and Tourism as standards in your regulations. The people of McPherson County, the people of Kansas, and the wildlife of Kansas deserve no less. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all. My name is Cynthia Peterson. I live at 209 North Walnut in Inman. I also manage the airport for the city of McPherson and the county of McPherson for all users, whatever need they may have, whether it be medical, flight out of here for specialized treatment not available nearby, or to introduce your kids and grandkids to aviation, provide free rides. A lot of these medical flights are free. I fortunately, me and the board, have the FAA to help us protect our airport. And we did update our standards to come into compliance with current FAA standards for the 5 nautical mile protection zone rather than the 3 mile that we had before. That has been done, and I'm thankful that that was voted in by both the city and the county. But I also want to say that the current regs are not adequate to protect these homeowners that live in the county or anyone else who's not thrilled about the idea of a 600-foot tall object. Setbacks designed for 250 feet are no way adequate for something that's 600 feet tall. These towers, if they're allowed to go in with the current setbacks, will also hinder the growth of all communities in this county as more wind farms, wind energy projects come into the county looking to go into other parts of the county, which I don't know what the current status is on that, but I've heard there are others. But it would especially hurt the city of McPherson, which has such a large manufacturing base. And I'm sure many, many people who work in the plants in McPherson live in the towns and the houses out in the county. And I think they would like to see their property values not diminished. And I would like to make sure, I would like for you all to consider the future growth of McPherson itself and the rest of the communities in this county. And I thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Steve Morrell. I'm 430 West Garfield, Lisbourg. And I also have some flight concerns, what Cynthia mentioned, but my concerns have to do with VFR flight, visual flight rules. Last fall, I drove from Harrington to Lisbourg, and I came on the Roxbury Road, and I was surprised and very concerned to see the turbines there around Tampa, I believe it is. And the tips of those turbines were in the clouds. And as a VFR pilot, if I was out in that area and I got caught, and let me just say that I've been flying for almost 50 years, and I haven't been caught, but sometime I probably will be, and as almost all pilots are at some point. You get caught by clouds descending around you, and my proposal to you is that I believe there should be a half-mile setback on every major highway. Because when those clouds come down and I have to get low, I'm going to get on a highway, I'm going to put it right below my left wing, and I'm going to follow that thing just as fast as I can to get to McPherson or Salina or anywhere else I can land safely. And the thought of flying between that set of wind turbines near Tampa, I mean, it gave me a heart failure almost. I mean, I would not want to have to do that. I think that's a extremely important piece. All the major highways should have a 1/2 mile setback on those highways. Second point I'd like to make, I've been in the mining industry for 45 years, and whenever we develop a mine, we have to have a closure plan developed for that mine. And that closure plan includes complete reclamation, and I'm suggesting to you that the regulations for this county need to have a financial assurance requirement within the regulation such that in 5 years, 10 years, in 15 or 50 years, there's sufficient money that the company has set aside such that those turbines can be reclaimed and taken away at that point. That's exactly what I'm required in the mining industry, and it's, I believe, what's appropriate for wind turbines also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
I'm Diane Frazier. I live at 1779 Mohawk Road. I'm specifically concerned about property value loss, and I know that they sent out this brochure here in the last couple of weeks that talked about how there was zero devaluation of property. And I know that Mr. Alexander spoke about how we need to look into the facts, and I think it's important when you're researching that you're finding studies that aren't bought and paid for by wind farms. The two largest studies that have ever been done on property devaluation from turbines studied millions of homes. They were done at universities by scientists, not paid for by the wind farm. And they assure me that I will lose value in my property. So my question to EDF today that they really could not answer for me is, if the wind farms are so confident as to say that there is zero devaluation, fine, but make them put their money where their mouth is with a regulation that protects non-participating property owners should they be unable to sell their house for fair market value. So if there's zero risk according to EDF, can we add a regulation that says that if there is property devaluation, that they guarantee reimbursement? If they're going to speak so assuredly that it's not going to affect my property value, then put a clause in the contract. What would be wrong with that? Also, I would like to speak to the fact that most of the people I've talked to in McPherson don't feel like being guinea pigs. When asked today, EDF could not answer the question of how many 600-foot tower wind farms were in the U.S. They couldn't name a single one. This is brand new. Most 600-foot towers have been reserved for offshore. I don't feel like being a guinea pig. There's a lot of research out there. You can find tons of research about wind turbines, but it's all on 250-foot towers to 400-foot towers. So I challenge you to find research on 600-foot towers. It's not out there because it's new. So I guess I'm asking if most of the setbacks in the world are set at a mile from a home, and that's based on smaller turbines. Will you guys even consider what you're gonna do with 600-foot towers? And like Linda spoke, I think, yes, we have to have different regulations. So either we need to update the regulations to match the 600-foot tower heights, or we need to go back to old tower heights. I mean, I think that everyone in this room can agree and be on the same side that we should have safety for all of us. So if you want to put the turbines in, fine, but let's be safe about it. Let's not say, okay, come in with your 600-foot tower. It hasn't been done anywhere else, but let's use all the old regulations. It doesn't make any sense to me. Another thought that I have that I just kind of wanted to reiterate, I've got a paper here, the zoning regulations of McPherson County, and I'm just going to hit some highlights here, but Article 1, number 101, the purpose. These regulations are intended to serve the following purposes. A, to promote the public health, safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare. Article 101D, to regulate and restrict the height, number of stories, and size of buildings and structures, including their distance. Article 101E, to protect property values. Article 101F, to provide for adequate light and air and acceptable noise levels. Article 108C, number 2, the proposed conditional use will not cause substantial injury to the value of other property in the neighborhood. Article 108C3, the location and size of the conditional use, the nature and the intensity of the operation involved in or conducted in connection with it, and the location of the site with respect to streets giving access to it, are such that the conditional use will not dominate the immediate neighborhood. What do 100 to 200 towers that are 600 feet tall do other than dominate a neighborhood? Article 108D, in order to reduce or minimize any potentially injurious effect upon other property in the neighborhood. I find it interesting that it's using the word potentially. This is your document. So you're not even talking about with certainty. They're saying potentially, and I'm saying there is potential for a 600-foot tower, right? So I'm hoping that you will even go back and read your own zoning documents of why this board is in place, I guess. Thanks for letting me speak.
Thank you. Anyone else? This gentleman raised his hand first. You guys do next.
My name is Gale Albrecht, I live in north central McPherson County, an area that has very few residences, and it'd be a prime candidate for a wind farm. The only thing I'd like to say is 91 scientists from 40 countries analyzed 6,000 studies, and their findings, was we must cut our use of fossil fuels. Our planet will warm by 2.7 degrees by 2040. Extreme rainfall events and hurricanes will occur. Wildfires and submerged coastlines will happen. And then we will have summer heat waves that will get hotter, longer, and create intense droughts. Now I realize that all you people and all the people back here are smarter than 91 scientists, but I think you should consider it. I think we ought to do our part to take care of a problem that exists that we don't want to recognize. Thank you.
Thank you. This gentleman is next.
I'm Frank Anderson. I live at 2058 Navajo Road. About 3 years ago, I was approached by the wind farm to lease property to them. I saw it no different than signing an oil lease. To lease property to an oil company to drill on my property. This company I feel is reputable. I don't understand why all the uproar about safety regulations is so eminent when we live out in the game preserve area. When the wildlife was brought into the game preserve, the surrounding community helped support that situation because the fences didn't keep the deer from escaping. Now we've had elk down there that sometimes they get away as well. I realize the fences are only built for certain situations, but along with that, as my memory recalls, this county had a problem with brucellosis in the cow herds many years ago, and come to find out the game preserve buffalo herd was part of the problem that we had with that. It took a long time to get that cleared up. I guess what I would like to talk to you about was the Christmas tree that I noticed last year that I hadn't seen before. We've got a tremendous Christmas tree right out here south of McPherson. This county has been blessed with a lot of industry. The refinery being a particular big industry, and it's also a big user of electricity. The Christmas tree I have in mind was one that I saw when I came back from Kansas City last year, and it's a new wind farm over in Marion County. As we were driving home one night, it lit up like a tremendous Christmas tree with light for miles. And to me, it was something that was harvesting what is very plentiful here in this county. It's called wind. I don't think we realize how much wind we have here that could be harnessed. Our forefathers came in many years ago, got tired of pumping water by hand, and what they put up? They put up windmills. I realize there's a lot of things with safety regulations that I don't understand. And along with that, I wouldn't be opposed to having one of these turbines within 1,000 foot of my residence. It's something that your regulations don't permit at current levels, but I'm not of the opinion that I'm afraid of them. We have a big fear factor here in the person, and talk about safety, the regulations that are put on our refinery. We don't understand what kind of a situation we have right next door to this city. But talk about danger, it's very imminent right there. The wind farm will be scattered over a tremendous area that wouldn't be near as detrimental to the major inhabitant of this whole county. Another thing I'd like to talk about is the taxation situation in the county. The industry that's come in has brought in many numerous workers. Because of that, our schools have had to enlarge in order to house the children that are being brought in to be the productive workers' children in the county. What happens to our tax bases in the county when the schools enlarge? Much of it was put right back on the agriculture industry, which is probably one of the biggest industries that is all put together in this county. Hopefully you guys won't shoot us in the foot if we have an opportunity to get some help on our taxation problems. The road construction over in Marion County has really improved since they got help with taxation. Hopefully you guys can consider that as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Keith Johnson in New Johnson Township. I just wanted to reiterate on a lot of these setback rules. I have no problem if my neighbor wants to put up a curb on his property. But I do have a problem if his turbine encroaches on my property. And I just, with the regulations you have now, EDF today in the presentation talked about a baseline 500 feet. They haven't decided whether to go above that or below that. Lynchburg markets their hill out there, Coronado Heights. It's a 300-foot hill. Now you're talking 600-foot tower is going to look pretty silly in front of their 300-foot hill that they're marketing as a tourist attraction.
So I would think that a 3,000 foot setback from the non-participating owner's property line would be a reasonable setback. I think 1.5 to 2 times the height of the tower setback from the public road would be a reasonable setback. If the landowner wants a tower 1,000 foot from his house, put it there, as long as it's on his property and it's not close to mine. So I'm not in favor of turbines. I think the wind industry is a scam on the federal government. That's just my opinion. And so I just hope you rewrite these regulations when you decide to move forward with this, so that the refinery is talking about safety. You don't see that refinery setting 1,000 foot from a residence. They've taken into consideration blast distances, so they own the ground around to give themselves safe room to operate. I would think wind turbines would at least want to do the same thing. So I realize you guys got jobs tomorrow and you don't want to be here all night, so I'll be done.
Thank you. Anybody else?
My name is Dale Sater. I live at 2317 18th Avenue, and I just need a little help with protocol. Is it my understanding that after this public hearing that you're going to vote yes or no on Mr. Wright's proposal? Yes or no? Is that correct? Would it not be better to look at the items that concern you, then discuss it, open it up to the public about your concerns, let the public give their input on your specific concerns about his proposal, then vote? That's my request. Table your vote and take a look at what the public has to say about your objections. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Jason Frazier, 1779 Mohawk Road. I've done just a quick economic study of the county of wind turbines came in. I know you say economics aren't on the page today, but if they weren't, then we wouldn't be here today because we already have city setbacks in place. Just 3 categories I looked at quickly. It was agriculture, tourism, and real estate. And I can share more, but I don't have time to go through the details. I estimated $5.9 million to $65 million annual liability to our county if wind farms are put in place. That's not including other issues such as local weather effects, reduced farming operations, health effects, ecosystem damage, wildlife and livestock, hunting, legal and financial liabilities to leaseholders is undisclosed at this time. Just on the real estate right now, there's 10 homes currently for sale in Person County with a projected, within the projected wind farm zone. The total asking price of those is $3.7 million. At a 20% loss, which is a conservative study done, is $740,000. 50% loss is $1.8 million. That'd be projected over $2 million annually, based on the average home sold in the proposed affected area. If what developers say is true and there's no desire on the part of landowners to exit the development area, and that newcomers will continue to seek and purchase property in the wind zone, then there should be no negative impact on property values. And that's true. Wind developers should be both willing and able to provide a property value guarantee to landowners with no economic risk on their part. Conversely, if property values indeed decline, then neither the wind company nor the town at large should profit at the expense of the home and landowners. The most basic principle of economics is that things are valued based on the law of supply and demand. It's quite obvious, all things being equal, that many people, due to view, sound, flicker, etc., would not choose to buy a home where there are industrial wind turbines nearby. Whether they're right or wrong in their reasoning is irrelevant. These beliefs would reduce demand, which clearly would have some negative impact on the price of nearby properties. In a report that concludes that there are zero negative property value effects related to wind projects simply cannot be considered seriously. The only question is how much of an impact there is. So before any community can say that a wind project is a financial windfall, a comprehensive and objective financial analysis must be done. Right now, no one in any federal, state, or local agency is thoroughly investigating these wind energy liabilities. Without such an analysis, all financial claims are simply one-sided of the economic equation and are not an accurate representation of the net economic impact. The evidence to date indicates that wind energy is the gift that keeps on giving. I know most of you are probably rolling your eyes when you hear the studies about bats being killed, affecting agriculture, and tourism being hurt due to these going up, which leads into my numbers. But they may sound like conspiracy theories and mostly made up as scare tactics. But if you actually start doing real research instead of taking our word for it, our opinions, as Daryl said, there are real case studies around the world for many years now that you can go to for evidence. It's not just our opinions, it's facts out there. We don't have the finance to do an economic study and put out propaganda. But if you look into those, you'll discover real-life examples of what has happened in other communities, thousands of them, not just a few here and there. Unfortunately, those of us with those concerns can't fund research and publicity campaigns the way wind companies do, which is why it's very important to take a serious look at the research that other counties, states, and countries have done, as well as pay attention to how wind farms have negatively impacted so many lives around the world. If we put safe setbacks in place in order to protect the health and well-being of the community, then we're changing nothing and hurting no one. By allowing them to be built near homes, if there's any thread of truth to the countless claims out there, we may be ruining people's lives. That's a mistake that cannot be undone, and those affected will never forget it. Is that a legacy you're willing to hang your hat on? I have real, actual examples of real estate losses in multiple places. This is one of, there are several other stats around. You can throw in the trash if you want, but not just opinions, these are facts.
Thank you.
My name is Sonia Wood, and I live at 452 East Lincoln Street in Lindsborg. I just want to say thank you for allowing us to have public comment tonight. We live in town, we live in Lindsborg, about 1,000 feet, my husband estimates, from the MKC grain elevator. When we moved there 7 years ago, we had no idea the amount of noise we were signing up for. Those blowers are loud, especially at night. We put up with the noise that first night, barely sleeping and waking frequently. It took time, but we did acclimate to the constant noise. Thankfully, after a few weeks, the blowers quit blowing, and we enjoyed the sweet sounds of birds again. Why am I wasting your time talking about grain elevators? We're here to discuss turbine safety. Well, there are several similarities, in fact. I already mentioned the noise. Turns out wind turbines are somewhat noisy. Unfortunately, turbines wind 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Neighbors get no break or reprieve. Knowing that those grain elevator blowers were going to turn off made our suffering a lot more bearable. Increased setbacks are one way that you can protect non-participants' rights to peace and quiet. It's peace and quiet that they work hard to I can't say I enjoy looking out my kitchen window and seeing a 100-foot tall hunk of concrete, but I know our elevator is important. It stores the grain we eat, it supports our farming community, and it's an integral part of the agricultural process. I understand and accept this necessary eyesore. I also understand that some people would see the grain elevator as a thing of beauty. I get that. Conversely, the turbines have no positive impact on Kansas agriculture. They will not put food on my table. If anything, they'll cause erosion and blight. The proposed changes will help keep these unsightly turbines from being the same eyesore to residents and tourists. Thirdly, the issue of safety in our town elevator has crossed my mind. As you all know, an elevator can malfunction or even explode on rare occasions. Knowing the elevator is being properly maintained by the caring people at MKC, many of them my friends and neighbors, eases my mind. I know safety is their priority. And this would also apply to the refinery. we trust the workers at that refinery to keep us safe. When it comes to industrial wind turbines, there are also malfunctions. There are fires, there's blade breakage, and ice throw, as you've already heard.